Hey there, Stephen Hale here from the Nashville Banner with my colleague Stephen Elliott to talk about Metro government. How late were you at the courthouse last night?
About 11:30.
So people are hearing this on Friday, but we're talking the day after you went to a Metro Council meeting where there were a few things, and then we'll move on to some other stuff. But I suppose the MOU, Downtown Partnership, public safety grant debate was probably the kind of headline of the night.
Yeah.
And from what I gather, people can, of course, read your coverage on NashvilleBanner.com, but from what I gathered, it was kind of a mixed bag of outcomes. So what went down with that?
Yeah, that's right. So this was introduced at the end of last year. So the state had this grant program for the four big cities, including Nashville, for downtown security. So think like those barriers that go up when there's big crowds in a downtown area to prevent cars, but a whole number of other things too. So Nashville applied, but not directly through the city. They applied through the Nashville Downtown Partnership, which is this kind of collection of businesses and property owners in the downtown area. And so they got $15 million for a handful of different things. And last month, at the last meeting of 2025, they were discussing some of these items, and there was a lot of questions about it from council members and from some people in the community who'd started posting on social media about it and coming to the meeting. And so they put it off until this meeting that just happened, and some of the stuff got through and some of it didn't.
Yeah. So, and it seems like, so the initial grant when this came out, and maybe if people are catching up on this, the timing, I think, contributed to this some, because it was filed at the council just before the Thanksgiving holiday. So people were kind of finding out about it and going, wait, what is this about? We don't know. And then it came up at the council, as you say, got deferred. But so this grant was for some cameras downtown that would have replaced existing cameras, which I think there was some confusion about that at the beginning, including for myself. I know when I was trying to write about it a little bit, it at first seemed like maybe they were going to be adding cameras, but my understanding is it was just going to be replacing some security cameras that are down there already.
Yeah. If you go to the community safety center at the police headquarters, you'll see a big wall of screens that looks like
The Dark Knight.
or the Bourne Identity or something. And it's footage of mostly the downtown area, Lower Broadway. And these are cameras that the city, the police department owns and has. You can see them if you're downtown. You look up and you'll see them. And so they were trying to replace those cameras with new ones that
Right.
I guess have better video quality and are more modern, I guess.
Yeah, and there was some audio recording equipment too that the police department or the mayor's office said was related to kind of some noise ordinance stuff and hearing cars driving, street racing, and things like that. But then the thing that I know got a lot of attention online was this grant included money for like a armored personnel vehicle and a number of other kind of
A mobile command post.
Yes, like I was about to say military style things. I can already hear all the spokespeople in various metro departments emailing us, telling us not to say that. But yeah, like a mobile command center, armored personnel carrier, and they said these things for big events, but it, I think, understandably kind of jumped out at people as surprising.
I think part of why it jumped out at people is because it was the Downtown Partnership bringing it.
wasn't
And so I
going to
think
the police department.
there was a thought that why does the Downtown Partnership, which is this nonprofit that has those people in the red vests on Segways, need an armored personnel carrier?
Right.
But it was actually going to the police department. It was supposed to be donated. The money was supposed to be donated to the police department so they could buy it.
Yeah, and without boring people too much, that ended up being related to the timeline of applying for the grant, and I think the way that the state, the requirements were you had to be in partnership with some kind of city organization. So there were some reasons for that it was kind of a pass through the partnership. But then we got to last night when it came up again, and it all got kind of broken up into different pieces. Is that right?
Yeah, and only some of the items from this broader package were up last night. I think there's still some funding out there for public bathrooms downtown, which a lot of the people that showed up to object to what was considered last night said public bathrooms, homelessness outreach downtown, that stuff sounds good. It's this other stuff that we don't like. The main thing that was discussed last night was the cameras. Part of that's because there was a public hearing for that one in particular, and there wasn't for the others. But they ended up voting that down in a pretty close vote. I think it was 15 to 20 for the funding for the cameras. So they rejected the money for the cameras. And then the funding for the armored vehicle and the mobile command center and one other thing that I think it's called a tactical support post, which I guess is something similar to that. That money was accepted. And the votes were pretty close on those ones as well.
Mm-hmm. And I don't want to get us too far off track, but I always get asked this question, and I've been asked it on podcasts before. So now I'll just ask it to you, which is, do you think that, and this thing specifically, but this kind of stuff, like downtown safety improvements or infrastructure stuff, how connected do you feel like that is to the city's aspirations about getting more of these big events, whether it's, the NFL draft was here, but now they're rebuilding the Titan Stadium. So it feels like there's some group of people, at least, that every time something like this comes up are like, oh, this is so we can get a Super Bowl, or, we're kind of trying to make ourselves more appealing to whoever it might be.
Yeah, and they brought that up with respect to the armored vehicle and the mobile command post. Police representatives said they have some stuff like that already, and this would just kind of add to that. But they use it for big events, whether that's big planned events or unplanned events. So, for instance, the NFL draft or some tragedy emergency situation. And so, yeah, I think in the air was, I don't know that anyone brought up a Super Bowl, but I think that was kind of in the air as like, we need this kind of stuff if we're going to host an event like that. Mm-hmm. But it didn't sway enough people.
So that was kind of the big takeaway from last night's meeting. There are some other things. Again, people can read your article. You cite them if you think there's anything from last night that is especially interesting. But there's some other stuff out there that I wanted to run by. So maybe you pick. We have a mayoral candidate in the race, even someone who presumably would be challenging Joy Stiles, presumably who would be challenging Mayor Freddie O'Connell, but he hasn't officially announced that he's running again. We have Elon Musk's boring tunnel out there, and there was like a 5-hour planning department meeting a couple weeks ago, and that's still lingering. So,
yeah,
dealer's choice.
Yeah, let's start with the boring company, because that came up last night, and then maybe we can talk about the planning, and then Joy Stiles.
Yes.
To round
and so
it out.
A lot of people will have heard of this, but the Boring Company, Elon Musk's company, wants to build a tunnel from downtown to the airport that you would be able to ride a Tesla through that tunnel to the airport.
Right.
It's basically the idea.
Yeah. And I think they wanted to extend elsewhere up to Vanderbilt and maybe to the East Bank.
Yeah, and there's a couple other cities that have either a version of this or have where it's been announced, but it hasn't always gone.
Yeah, there's one in Vegas. It's kind of under their big convention center, so it's not the same as what's being imagined here. It's a lot smaller scale than that, but there's already a hole over by the state capitol. I'm sure that a lot of people have driven by it, and maybe they've wondered what it was, but yeah, it was announced last year, and took a lot of people by surprise in Metro, because it was announced with the state, and the state said this is all going to be happening on state property and under state routes. So Metro wasn't really involved. It came out over time that the company had approached the mayor's office months and months ago, maybe back in 2024 even. And there's a number of things that have come out about why Metro didn't proceed and kind of be part of those negotiations. I think there's a thinking that it's because Elon Musk is so politically toxic here, and that was right around the time of the presidential election and when Elon was getting really involved in national politics. But that was also right around the time that the mayor was pushing the transit referendum, and I think there's been some talk that he didn't want the city to be distracted from that by saying, oh, there's this magic tunnel that can solve all our problems, so we don't need to vote for this. Mm-hmm. But regardless, a lot of people in Metro are upset that this company is coming in and digging under the ground, and we don't know a whole lot about the safety and the technology. And
it started like right away, too. I mean, it seemed like it wasn't that long after we heard this was happening at all that they were digging a hole.
Yeah, it was definitely on the glide path from the state. They had approved a lease with them really quickly, and and the lease is for $0. But anyway, there was a resolution filed late last year, at the end of the year, that just basically opposed the tunnel and said all the things that they disagreed with and questioned the safety and the environmental impact. And they've pushed it off now twice. They deferred it last night, and one of the reasons why they did that is because the boring company has agreed to send someone to come to a council committee and answer questions in public, which is something they'd been asking for a while. And I'm not sure what was up with the scheduling or why it took this long to get that, but the company has been trying to do this without getting Metro permits, which is pretty hard when you're doing a project of this scale, because anytime you touch a utility or a city-owned road, you're going to come up with something that requires the city to be involved. But for now, they've mostly been going through the state.
It's pretty wild. So, and I don't know if protest is quite the right word, but there was a gathering of opponents planned for last night, right? And I know it didn't end up coming up at the meeting, but I mean, there's been some public displays of opposition to this too. So I guess that'll keep happening.
Yeah, and I think there was a organizing meeting over the weekend talking about opposing it, and there was a handful of people that showed up last night protesting the tunnel. It kind of dissipated once they realized the resolution wasn't going to be heard, but I'm sure that we'll continue to see people like that showing up to these things.
Right. The other thing we mentioned is the planning, I don't know if I'm even saying it right, planning commission.
Yes.
Thank you. There was this marathon meeting, public hearing.
Their meetings tend to be.
Yeah. And for a lot of us, or at least for myself, I'm not always tuning into the planning. We may have some real planning heads listening, but this was a planning meeting that came on my radar unexpectedly. Well, not unexpectedly. I knew this issue had been bubbling up. But anyway, so I guess first, before we even talk about the Buchanan Street stuff that brought about this long meeting, can you tell people, and by people also me, what the Planning Commission is?
It's a board of volunteers who are appointed, mostly by the mayor, and they hear questions about development in the city, and they recommend things to the Metro Council. So they don't really usually get an up or down vote on whether something can go forward or not, a development in your neighborhood, whether it's someone wants to tear down a house and put two up there, or whether someone wants to take an empty lot on a main street and turn it into a big apartment complex. If the zoning has to change, then it usually goes to the Planning Commission, and they have these marathon meetings because if there's a public hearing at the Planning Commission, then that means anyone can show up and talk, and so some of these issues are very personal to people. If it's your street, your block,
right,
that's changing, these energy can really get worked up in that room, and a lot of people will show up to express themselves.
Yeah. So and if people go to a council meeting or watch them online, before a bill is discussed, you'll often hear a council member say, like, this got a such and such from planning, meaning like Planning Commission recommended this, or they didn't recommend it, or whatever they did.
Yeah. And if the commission does not recommend something, if they say this sucks, then it doesn't kill it. Usually it just means the council needs a few more votes to pass it. Got it.
So, and the Planning Commission is probably something that people should become more interested in, because a lot of, I don't know if you've heard, but there's been some studies about housing being an issue here.
Yes.
And because of the affordable housing crisis and the amount of housing that all these studies keep saying we need, like, Planning Commission is very involved in housing development plans in the city. So that's, people should probably, brush up on that. But specifically what came up, was it a week or two ago, was this policy related to establishments on Buchanan Street in North Nashville that, got a lot of it. You were at that meeting in person?
I watched
online.
You
watched it. Okay, you
that one went deep into the night, so yes. I'm glad I stayed home for that one. But I was logged on watching, and actually they had to get the fire marshal involved, so it might have been a tricky situation if I had been there and had to watch from the hallway anyway. But there were a lot of people there. So basically, Brandon Taylor is the council member who represents that area of North Nashville, and he's been hearing complaints from the people who live directly adjacent to that strip of businesses along Buchanan Street, whether it's late night noise or trash in the yards or things like that. So he created this new tool that's now available to council members all over the city, but he's the one who brought it. And so now he's trying to apply it for the first time along this strip. And basically what it would do is it restrict the types of businesses that could open there and the ways they could operate. So businesses that are there now would be grandfathered in essentially, but any new development there, if someone wanted to build a new nightclub or a new another business, it would have to follow these guidelines.
Got it. And this, it seemed to me there were a lot of layers of what was going on here. As you said, any kind of anything that involves development or restrictions in people's neighborhoods, everyone has an opinion about it. It's where they live or it's where they go, But this also had the element of a lot of these are Black-owned businesses in North Nashville. Some of them been there a long time, or maybe they're new, but they're kind of new to the neighborhood in a way that people like. And so there were a lot of different people with strong opinions about what the effect of this would do. And even though, as you said, you could apply this anywhere around the city, it was happening right here in the heart of very historically Black neighborhood of Nashville. And it seemed like that became a big part of it too, on top of the other things that happen with zoning debates.
Yeah, a lot of people showed up and were upset about, in particular, a provision that would make a nightclub close by 12 midnight or 11, I think. And basically they're saying that this neighborhood has a history of vibrant nightlife and being an important part of Black Nashville, and to restrict it is unfair and kind of ripping out this part of the city's culture. But there were a lot of residents in that area who are also Black who said, we hate these businesses. And it's not just nightclubs. It also has restrictions on payday lenders and liquor stores and auto shops. And so it's not just about the nightclub element, but that was a big part of it. There was a nightclub there for about a decade that a lot of these residents referenced. It burned down a year or so ago. But the owner of that club and some people who worked there and some patrons of that club had shown up to speak and talk about this district and why it was important to have a vibrant nightlife.
And that's an ongoing issue, right? That's going to have to come up in front of the council in the future. Yeah,
it was on the agenda last night, but Councilman Taylor deferred it, and there's going to be a public hearing later, and he also said he's going to have another community meeting about it. So there'll be a lot more discussion about that.
Got it. So there'll be a couple more probably public meetings about that. Before we go, we should talk about, you and I love to discuss mayoral elections as many years before they happen as possible. This one's actually coming up not too far away, but Joy Stiles announced she's going to run for mayor. Freddie O'Connell, our current mayor, Freddie O'Connell, has not officially said he's running again, at least that I've seen. Maybe I've missed that. So what's the situation there?
Yeah, we talked to the mayor at the end of last year, about a month ago, and he'd done an interview several months before where he was asked if he was running for re-election, and his answer was kind of I'm not sure, which took a lot of people by surprise because he'd been raising money, and he, as a first-term mayor, it's pretty common for them to run for re-election despite our last experience with John Cooper. So I think most people expected him to run again. So that took me by surprise, and I think other people. So I asked him about it again last month, and he said he expects to run, but he's working through some stuff with his family. I think his daughter has some concerns about the attention they get as a family and how that he gets as a public figure. So his comments on that are pretty interesting if you want to go back and read our interview with him that was published around New Year's. But anyway, Councilmember Joy Stiles, who represents the Antioch area on the council, it's her second term, she announced this week that she's going to run. She has a lot of criticisms of Mayor O'Connell specifically, but like you said, it's not exactly certain that he will be on the ballot as well. She's an fierce advocate for the Antioch area. She is she is not conflict averse, and I talked about that with her when I called her after she announced, and she's not shy about that. She's
been in the middle of some
spats.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, some dust ups.
Yeah, so I asked her about that, and she said that that's a good thing for being mayor. You need to be able to stand your ground and fight for what you believe in. Freddie O'Connell was a district council member. Historically, we kind of thought that wasn't a big enough platform to raise the money and to have the name ID to make a successful run. It's a different situation, but he obviously did win. So there are some questions about whether she can raise money, whether she can get the message out. But yeah, she'll be running. There's another candidate, also Lou Wilbanks, who we know a little less about, but she's been really involved in some of those planning fights that you mentioned earlier. She's kind of a critic of the move to build more housing in general.
So, I mean, it seems like the big factor here is obviously if the mayor runs for re-election. If he does, it kind of feels like maybe a lot of other more prominent figures in Nashville don't get in the race because it's just you're running against an incumbent mayor. But if he doesn't, then it's just a wide open race, and who knows what happens. It'll
be really interesting to see, because I think that the move from Megan Barry leaving office early to a interim acting part-time mayor in David Briley, who was only mayor for a little over a year, I think, into John Cooper, who didn't run for re-election, has sort of broken this trend in Metro history, where generally if you got elected and you would serve another term. So it'll be really interesting to see whether it gets back on that track, or if like you said, prominent people wouldn't want to challenge an incumbent mayor and burn those bridges or whatever if they lost. It'll be interesting to see if people have moved past that and don't care so much about that anymore and are willing to do that.
All right. Well, we'll follow up again next time you're at a marathon council meeting. Maybe we can do one of these like live from the like almost like post game. Like we get in one of those committee rooms after the council meeting, and it's just like it's midnight. There's like lukewarm coffee in there, and we're just like chatting it up.
I would love that.
Let's do that.
I would love that.
All right. Thanks, man.